My lying wife had a multiple-year-long affair and the lawyer told me I would lose everything if I divorced her. So I spent years perfecting my payback. My revenge began by discovering my wife Carrie's infidelity after 14 years of marriage and 3 kids. I saw a text appear on her work phone for just a few seconds that would forever change my life. It was a message that was sexually graphic and had no business being on anyone's work phone. It was on the lock screen and the sender's name, Perry, was visible. The world stopped around me. I just froze. My first thoughts were, what the hell was that about? It's her work phone. That kind of message gets people fired. Then it hit me. Was Carrie having an affair? It's amazing how the brain works. I suddenly started remembering a lot of things Carrie had done that seemed odd, but I'd either dismissed them myself or immediately accepted her explanation. She was always walking out of the room to answer a call or return a text and claimed that it would violate HIPAA. She was a nurse, if I overheard her talking about a patient. I accepted this because education has similar privacy laws regarding students. I'm a district school admin. She would sometimes come home with the faint smell of cologne on her clothes and claimed it was from helping to move male patients. Again, I accepted this at face value, but it always struck me as odd how it seemed to have the same scent of cologne. Once the proverbial barn door was open, I started seeing a lot of things that I'd missed before. Our love life in the bedroom had cooled off considerably, which wasn't helped by her having to leave the house at odd hours to fill in for other nurses that called in sick. I also recalled where I'd seen the name Perry before, and a call to the hospital confirmed he was a doctor there. For the next week or so, I was walking around in daze trying to put all of the pieces together. One of our kids had left a book in Carrie's car, so it was an excuse to visit the hospital. My kid went up to get Carrie's car key. I talked to a nurse in the lobby and joked about how work phones seem like a blessing, but all they do is put you on call 24 hours a day. This led to her eventually telling me that the hospital was too cheap to give cell phones to nurses, so only high-level executives got them, which didn't include Carrie. With pretty much everything confirmed, I took some personal time off the next day to talk to a divorce lawyer. The news she gave me was horrible. We lived in a community property state with no-fault divorce. I made more money than Carrie, she'd been the primary caretaker of the kids, and we'd been married for more than 10 years. Basically, if I filed for divorce, I'd be screwed. Lose the house, pay alimony, she'd get a huge chunk of my retirement, and I'd pay child support for the next decade unless I was lucky enough to be awarded joint custody. The worst thing she told me was that it didn't matter that she cheated. It didn't matter. I was crushed. There was only one person I could trust with this kind of information. She was a fellow teacher that had also made the jump to administration, but was stuck at a school site. Let's call her Anne. Anne had been married at 19, but her marriage was annulled when her husband got some other woman pregnant. Since then, she'd focused on her career and we'd found we were kindred spirits in a lot of ways regarding K-12 education. I talked to Anne. She said something to me that changed my whole mindset. If you don't like the hand you're dealt, change the deck. I realized I had 2 problems. I made more money than Carrie and she had more time than me to be the primary caretaker of the kids. The second issue was actually kind of easy. At every district office, there are jobs that are fast tracks to higher positions and there are jobs that administrators suffer through. One of these dead-end regulatory positions was open again. I sat down with our district superintendent and asked about being transferred to that position. At first he was shocked, but I told him that it was my time to take one for the team and it would fill a hole in my admin experience. He agreed. It was really just crunching numbers with no personnel or student interaction, so I could set my schedule, even take a laptop home and work there. With my new free time, I began taking the kids to school, picking them up from school, and taking them home. I'd help them with their homework, make dinner, etc., while the end goal was to become their primary caretaker. I can't explain how much I really enjoyed taking a more active role in their day-to-day lives. My salary hadn't been reduced, so I needed to find a way for Carrie to make a lot more money than she was in current nursing position. I remembered Carrie being mad that her supervisor told her in the future, bachelor degrees will be worthless and everyone will need at least a master's degree. Carrie had worked hard to get her bachelor's and that supervisor's comment peed all over her hard work. I talked her into starting a master's program. I told her that since I had a much more flexible work schedule, I would keep taking care of the kids. She was reluctant at first, then I said, you could have every evening free to study or go to class, whatever you want to do. I saw her eyes immediately light up, probably thinking that she could spend more time with Perry. To make sure she was actually completing her master's courses, I paid her tuition and fees directly to her university. It was going to take her between 2 and 3 years to finish. Those years were rough at times. I could tell every time she was rushing off or coming back from seeing Perry. There was an excitement or sense of satisfaction in her eyes that just wasn't there when she was doing her coursework. I had to either smile or pretend I didn't notice. My temper got short at times and I found myself in arguments over petty nonsense. A couple of times I almost blew the whole charade, having to bite my tongue and apologize rather than scream insults at her that she deserved. Anne remained my confidant through all of this. I'd recommended her for my previous fast-track position and she joined me at the district office. Anne was qualified, hard-working, ambitious, and only needed her foot in the door to impress the higher-ups. I even got a few pats on the back for recommending her after she impressed everyone. Anne and I started our own affair. It wasn't some hot-blooded, passionate romance, but 2 friends giving each other what they need. Without Anne, I wouldn't have been able to maintain the charade of being the oblivious cuckold. But when Carrie would come home smiling after spending time with Perry, I was able to bear it, smiling back because I had my own lover. After 3.5 years, Carrie completed her master's and was promoted at her hospital. Her salary went up substantially and was now higher than mine. When the kids and I made her a congratulations dinner, I made a joke about her being the breadwinner for the family and she laughed, Joking back I should be a stay-at-home dad now. A month later, I went back to the lawyer and told her the financial situation had drastically changed. With these new facts, she drafted the petition and filed it. When the kids were with my mother, I had Carrie served. The deputy knocked on our front door and I let him in, pointing at my wife. He asked her name and then handed her a copy of the divorce petition. With the deputy standing there, I told Carrie I knew all about her affair with Perry. I told her to go be happy with her Dr. Lover. She screamed at me, tried to lie, and then made the mistake of rushing toward me. The deputy stopped her and warned her that women go to jail for domestic violence too. He suggested she pack a bag to stay somewhere else. Carrie left after I promised not to tell the kids about her affair. I didn't tell the kids. But I told my mother, who told my sister, who told her kids, who told their cousins, my kids. It took a few days, but eventually the kids knew that dad was divorcing mom because she had a boyfriend. In the end, the court granted the divorce, giving me primary custody of our kids. Because I was already their primary caretaker, I kept the house with the promise I'd refinance to buy out Carrie's half. She was ordered to pay child support, and I used that fact to negotiate with her to give up any rights to my retirement if I bought her out. I was able to refinance my home, and with a little money borrowed from my parents, I bought our Carrie's community property interest in the home and in my retirement. The day she signed all the paperwork with my lawyer finally ending any possible financial obligations to her was the happiest I'd been. I felt like I could finally breathe. I celebrated with Anne, who'd been my rock through all of it. I'm not ashamed to say that through the years I'd cried many times in her arms. Anne and I would eventually marry. She got promoted to a higher position and I was convinced to take back my previous position at the district when my youngest child reached high school. Carrie and I got along well after the divorce. We took the kids to family therapy and worked out this co-parenting thing. For a few months, she took a beating from the kids about why she needed a boyfriend when daddy was there all along. Between the kids and the therapist raking her over the coals, I didn't have to say anything at all. Carrie missed a lot of time with the kids because of her now legitimately busy work schedule, and I actually felt bad that my kids were missing time with their mother, so encouraged them to talk to her on the phone instead. When Carrie found out that I'd proposed to Anne, she congratulated me. I told her it's okay for her to marry Perry too. She got sad. She told me that Perry had started seeing another woman, a younger nurse at the hospital, because with her new position, she didn't have time for him, and when they did get together, she wasn't fun anymore. My ex-wife, the woman who'd cheated on me and destroyed our marriage, was looking to me for sympathy. I had none to give. What I had was years of anger and frustration. Years of knowing some other man was sleeping with my wife. I'd lost weight from not being able to eat, I'd suffered hypertension and had to confide in my doctor why it wasn't the stress of my job. I had to listen to my dentist complain about how I was grinding and listening to him tell me I'd need dental implants if it kept up. There were times when I had to be intimate with Carrie to keep up the charade, only to lie that I wanted to use rubbers to remind us how we used to have intimacy when we were dating, or because I might have a bladder infection, then go take a test anyway and wait for the results before seeing Anne again. But in the end, it was all worth it. My girlfriend's dad is abusive towards me and my girlfriend defends him constantly. My girlfriend and I have been dating for over a year and I've met her parents a few times, and each time her dad has made a strong point to criticize me heavily. According to him, he's not sure if I'm manly enough for his daughter because I paint my nails. Thankfully, they live 4 hours away from us, so we do not go over often. This year was going to be the first holiday that I spent with her family. We drove down Thanksgiving morning and were going to spend the night there, then a few days at a resort. For context on my girlfriend's parents, they are blue collar and church going, while I teach high school math. A bit of a cultural difference. My girlfriend made me promise not to get into a discussion with her dad on politics or religion. I was fine with that, I'm not going to change his mind. As I've stated before, her dad never hid the fact that he didn't respect me. Well, this time when I arrived, the whole time that I was there, on top of talking about the fact I paint my nails, which is such an outdated view, he kept making comments about teachers indoctrinating students, Common Core, and other nonsense. This was no reason for me to get in a fight though, I'm sure that's what he wanted by doing this. The whole time he did this, I mostly ignored him, but he never let up, he was a total buttface. Everyone was uncomfortable. My girlfriend and her mom tried to change the subject, but they never stood up to him when he called me out or even called me a girly wimp. When he commented about the LGBTQ, I was done with his crap and told my girlfriend, in front of her dad, that either she could say something or I would be more than happy to. She begged me not to make a scene. Her dad was telling me to go ahead and try to make a scene. But considering my girlfriend was begging me not to, I didn't. I went upstairs, packed up, thanked everyone and left. As I was leaving I heard her dad say that I'm acting like a woman by feeling so emotional that I'm walking out. I didn't respond. I went on to the resort and enjoyed my weekend alone. My girlfriend has been trying to apologize, but when I asked what she said to her dad when I left, she told me she still never confronted him. On top of that, he continued to insult me after I left. Her only solution seems to hope that he'll eventually lighten up. My dad passed away 6 months ago and I just found his disturbing deathbed confession. I want to tell my sister, but it would break her heart. So my dad passed away 6 months ago after a long and hard battle with cancer, which he contracted not long after his wife, our mother, passed away. Seeing him after our mother passed away was hard. It was almost like his life lost all meaning. That's what makes this confession all the more shocking and heartbreaking. You see, my father and my mother had this undying love that I feel every person in the world should experience and enjoy, because no matter how old they got, they cuddled, they kissed, they held hands and went on romantic getaways, somehow seeming to never lose that spark for each other. I remember as a kid my father surprising my mother with flowers often, buying her chocolates and little gifts randomly, making her handmade drawings. He literally learned origami so he could make swans for her as they were her favorite animal, and each birthday would give her a swan colored indifferently until he had a color beginning with every letter of her full name. My sister noticed this more. While I thought it was cute that our parents were couple goals, my sister admired it more than anything. She would talk about it so much, tell her friends how amazing our parents' relationship was, and would always say that unless she meets a man who treats her how dad treats mom, she doesn't want it. Our father never yelled, never screamed, was the most calm man in the world, despite standing at 6'7" and weighing close to 250 pounds. He was a gentle giant. The one time I saw him get angry was when, as a family, when walking down the street, two passersby grabbed my mother's hair and yanked it as a joke. My dad proceeded to beat them to a pulp there and then. I remember that moment so well. It encapsulated everything my dad was. The most tender and loving man, but one who would always defend his wife. So, onto the letter. I was cleaning out my dad's attic recently when I stumbled upon a letter. I opened it as I was curious, and when I read it my world shattered. The gist of the letter read, "Dear whoever finds this. Most likely my son or daughter. I'm sure you miss me and miss your mother, and I missed her dearly too in the dying parts of my life. I wanted to hold her one more time. I'm sure you have had this perception that my wife and I's marriage was filled with never-ending love, and love so true that it could never be disputed. I'm sorry, but that is not the whole truth. You see, when I met my wife, she did not catch my eye in the slightest. But I caught hers. I got to know her over time and we hung out sometimes, and over time I could tell she started to develop feelings for me. And I did too. She went from a woman I never thought I could form love with, to someone that I was interested in. And what sparked that was not her beauty, but that she was by far without a doubt the most kind-hearted and beautiful soul I have ever met in my life. I mean, she did things so beautiful I would tear up on the inside. When I met her first, she was broken and deeply traumatized by her horrible life. Despite this, she was so pure. Such a kind soul. I took to loving her over time, and a large reason of that was because she loved me more than I think anyone ever could. Every time I would see her, she would almost cry of happiness. She told me time and time again that I healed her. Throughout the years, my acts of love to her were never ending. But none of them were purely out of love for her. About 2 years into our relationship I realized I was never going to love her the way I am capable of loving someone deep down, but the way she showed me love was incomparable to anyone else I have ever experienced. I thought so long and so hard, and my decision was to spend my life with her. Spend my life not loving her the way I know I can deep down, and quite frankly not loving her romantically all that much. To me, she was my best friend who I loved to an extent romantically. But I did not love her as much as she loved me in that sense. And so I stayed. I decided that ultimately, her happiness matters way more to me than my own. So much more, that I was willing to uphold an artificial level of love for my entire life for her sake. She died happy, she lived happy, she was in love every day for her life, and my choice to mask my feelings made that happen. It was the ultimate sacrifice for me. The thing is, when we were old I could not imagine my life without her. She was a part of me, whether that was romantic love on the same level as hers or not. And when she died I was devastated. I had grown to love this woman so strongly, just not in a totally romantic sense, and I cared for her more than anyone could ever understand. Before you wonder, I did not cheat or ever be disloyal to her. I sacrificed my life to make her happy. Her soul was that beautiful. I truly have no regrets about anything that I did. Making her happy was my life's mission, and I succeeded. I cried a lot after reading that. My whole life was almost a lie. I wanted to be mad at my dad, but I couldn't be. He sacrificed his whole life to raise happy kids and to make a woman happy. But on the other side I'm so annoyed. Why did he have to leave this letter? I feel like I should show my sister it as she should know the truth. But her heart will break if I do. I really don't know what to do. So after doing a lot of thinking, I decided that the only right thing to do was to tell my sister. Sure, I could have hidden the letter or even burned it, but the guilt of knowing such a thing and keeping it from her was not something I could have handled. I invited my sister to come over and told her it is urgent. When she came over I told her to sit down. She asked me if everything was okay and I said nothing. Instead, I took out my dad's letter from my pocket and gave it to her. I told her to read it before asking any questions. She read the letter and I could see her smiling for the first half, but when she reached the confession, I could see her face change and her eyes well up with tears. After reading it, she handed it back to me and said, "Please say you're joking and this is fake." That broke my heart, and I had to tell her I was not. She started bawling her eyes out and I hugged her. My father taught me to comfort the women in your life as best as you can, be there as an emotional rock for them, and that's what I was doing. I tried my best not to cry, and besides 1 or 2 tears I held it in. My sister and I talked for a very, very long time about this letter. My sister said she was so deeply hurt by this, and at first was aggravated and angry at our father for doing this, for living his life like this. But then I talked to her. We both came to the conclusion that our father was right. It was the ultimate sacrifice that he made. For someone to live their entire life, and dedicate its entirety to their partner in order to make them happy because he believed she deserved to be happy, was not something that my sister nor I could comprehend. We both tried to understand how he was able to keep such a convincing mask on for so long without ever even cracking a tiny amount. We made jokes by the end of our conversation, and recalled some of our fondest moments as a family. We both left the conversation truly seeing our late father as a superhero. I got a lot of comments also insulting my father, calling him all sorts of names, and these comments disgusted me. My father was the greatest man I have ever met in my life and a father who every child wishes they had. I understand that the mask he wore his whole life might present him as a villain and an egotist, but no man that I know would be willing to make a sacrifice so large for his wife, not one. My crazy girlfriend of 4 years randomly claimed that I assaulted her, then called the police. This came totally out of the blue. I honestly don't know what the F happened. A couple of days ago, my girlfriend who I lived with, left our apartment while I was at work, claimed to her whole family and mutual friends that I'd been assaulting her daily and laying hands on her every chance I could, and then blocked me on everything. I have no idea what's going on, why she would decide to do this. There weren't any major problems in our relationship that I could see, and we just had consensual intimacy last night. The very last time I spoke to her before all of this happened, she was perfectly fine, kissed me goodbye and told me she moved me before I went to work, and everything was normal. Then I got a call from my dad toward the end of the day asking me calmly if I've been laying hands on my girlfriend. I didn't know what he was talking about, and then he told me. In a panic, I rushed home, and she had gotten all of her stuff and is staying either with her family, or a friend of hers. My Facebook account is blowing up, and I have no idea what to do. None of what is being said is true, and I don't know if someone is just playing a cruel joke on me. A few people even mentioned that the police were called, but I haven't heard anything as of yet. The last major argument we had was probably in February around Valentine's Day. We were going through some financial trouble, the stress got to us, and we were both getting upset with each other over petty household things. She was my best friend, the person I could rely on to be there for me, and the person I would be there for always, no matter what. We were definitely planning on getting married. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. Her family had basically accepted me into the family. I was close with both her mom and her dad. I only called them both once each, neither of them answered my calls. I called my girlfriend twice. No answer. She blocked me on every social media platform of hers that I know of. I asked a couple of friends, but they are being distant with me, just one-word answers or ghosting me. What the F is happening here? Okay, so I found out what happened, and I am appalled. So one of my girlfriend's friends came forward and told me that apparently my girlfriend decided to play a prank on me. She had the bright idea of leaving the house for a couple of days to set up a surprise birthday party for me set for this weekend. I don't know what the F she was thinking, nor do I even really know the full story yet. She is not really the prank-playing type and I guess thought this would be hilarious or something. It looks like a majority of those friends who were acting distant were in on it. After I started being upfront and honest with showing people my texts with her, one of them told her that this wasn't cool, and that if she didn't come clean, then she would. Well, she didn't come clean, and her friend came forward. I guess that's why nobody was answering their texts? Anyway, I texted her and I told her that I knew, asked her what the F she was thinking. She started blowing my phone up apologizing. She said her prank just went too far and spiraled out of control when it got to social media, and that she didn't know how to come clean when she realized that it crossed a line. She also said that she didn't mean to let it come out that I was abusing her, and that she just wanted to make it seem like she left me, and that the abuse stuff was a rumor started by some other people who weren't in on her joke. I just didn't really respond to her. I left and went to my parents' house before she got back home. My family now thinks she's an effing moron, so her relationship with them is ruined right before our marriage, so that's great. Our mutual friends are now split in half with half of them thinking she's an idiot, and the other half feeling God knows what about the situation. I'm frankly embarrassed, and feel stupid for wasting everyone's time and dragging them into my relationship with my girlfriend. I don't really know where to go from here. I don't know if I should call off the wedding, or postpone it and try to work out what the hell went through her mind. I spoke to my girlfriend in person after I posted my update. From her perspective, her original idea was to make it look like she just got mad or something, grabbed a few things, and left to her friend's house, where she was going to have the party thrown. Her friend has a really nice house that's perfect for a 20 to 30 person get-together. She was with her two friends, and made an off-the-cuff remark when her friend said, "What are you going to say when he asks why?" And she said, "I don't know, I'll probably tell him that I feel like he got too serious when we had intimacy, or something like that." Then her other friend who was with her immediately took it to social media without the other two girls knowing, and then when they checked their phones later on that day, it was already a dumpster fire. I said great, all that is understandable. Just one question, why did you then block me and then refuse to answer my calls, because that seemed pretty effing intentional to me. She said because she didn't want to throw her idiot friend under the bus, and thought it would all go away if she just threw the party, and she hadn't realized how far it all went so quickly. I thanked her for telling me, and then I called off the wedding entirely. She cried, I cried, it was a goddamn mess. She asked where we were going from here. I told her I don't know. I don't even know if the relationship is over yet, but I know that the engagement is over, and that if I decide to give it another chance, at the bare minimum, we need to build my trust for her from the ground up, if not the entire relationship. And now I have to decide if I want that. Do I want to spend another 4 years being undecided? If I'm being honest with myself, I imagine it taking another couple of years before I can trust her again. I told her that I have a lot to think about. I spoke to her dad last night. We shared a case of beers and had a conversation that lasted about 5 hours. My girlfriend hasn't spoken to anyone, and has basically been locked up in her old bedroom for now. She's been crying a lot. I do believe that she's genuinely remorseful about all of this, which complicates things. Her dad caught wind of the situation on Facebook but learned what was really going on maybe like an hour later. He'd gotten my calls, but hadn't returned them because he called his daughter first. She told him, and he just didn't know what to say to her. He told me that she's not truly stupid, but that she has a history of sometimes not thinking about things before she says them, and the impact her offhand remarks can have. He said this is the worst it's ever snowballed, but she's had situations in the past where she says something stupid or insulting, and doesn't realize the impact of what she said until hours later when the other person blows up over it. As for my reputation, nobody thinks I'm an abuser. It's firmly out there now. Her reputation took a much more significant and lasting hit. I haven't lost any friends, except for the idiot social media girl.